Nobody says they want to be a mailman when they grow up, right? Like, it's usually something sexy, like a cop or a fireman. It's not like someone graduates Harvard and says, you know what? I want to take a job with a crappy eagle mascot on the chest. I can tell you this. You kind of find yourself doing it one day as you run down the street after the Johnson's dog gets off its leash and chases you back to your truck. I started with the United States Postal Service in July of 2002. I was laid off after losing my very prestigious job of running a family restaurant straight into the ground. And I was only half-heartedly looking for jobs in between getting drunk with my friends. My job prospects were somewhere between, maybe I could become a bar back, maybe I could sell weed. See where it takes us. To be honest with you, my resume was about as thin as a supermodel who only eats ice cubes. Growing tired of having to hear me puke from my excessive drinking during my kind of period of fun employment, my brother, who at the time was an acting supervisor at the Postal Service, came home and said, dude, that's it. I'm getting you a goddamn job. And when's the last time you showered? Now, the interesting thing about it is that both my uncle and my brother worked at the same post office in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. And the interesting thing is that the Postal Service is one of the last places on earth where whole families can be employed. Fathers worked alongside sons, mothers along daughters, sometimes spouses even, which made it really interesting. Trust me, it was a nightmare. But it's one of those, it's almost like a throwback to the old steel mills where generations of families all worked for the same company, a rarity given the economic environment of our times. But getting a job with the Postal Service is like hitting the blue-collar lottery. We used to have a saying where you go, yo, you got the job, got the bennies, set for life. Because that's kind of how you felt when you got a job with the Postal Service. Because it guaranteed that you were going to have a lifetime of employment. Rarely did they lay anyone off. It took like an act of Congress. I was a shop steward. Like there were people that did drugs at work and they kept their jobs. It was absolutely insane. But that was really good. And to be a letter carrier in those days still meant something. You know, people held it in high regard as a respectable position and job. And it was my entry into the middle class. When you become a letter carrier, you instantly get woven into the fabric of the neighborhoods you deliver to. It's almost like you become like a light post or a street sign. You're privy to an inside look at how the drama of everyday life unfolds. You get this glimpse into the lives of people you would never see otherwise if it weren't for delivering their magazines, or soap, or in some cases, sex toys. So when you reach into your bag, all you feel is a dick. Look, nobody knows you better than your mailman. Not even your mother. Remember that. I took this job thinking to myself, seriously, how hard can it be to walk? Like, I love walking. Like, this has got to be a cake job. I was gravely mistaken. Walking to the bar with your friends is like one thing. But try walking in the middle of a heat wave while you have a 50-pound bag on your back and the sweat is just like dripping off your eyes and like searing your eyeballs shut. So you're like walking around streets like this. I ended my first week with the post office looking like Bugs Bunny when he would crawl through a desert when he was thirsty. All I could think of was, no wonder the turnover rate at this place is so high. Jesus Christ, these people make it look so damn easy. I lost 35 pounds in my first 3 months as a letter carrier. I'm 5'6". That's what my license says. Sticking to it. I'm 5'6", and I was 150 pounds at the time. I look like I spent the past 3 months in a crack den. People actively worried about my health. They would come up to my friends and in hushed tones, they'd be like, is Nick okay? And then they would come up to me and be like, are you all right? And I'd be like, dude, I'm just walking, man. Got that whole walker's high. It's unlike any other job in the world. There's just nothing else you can ever compare it to. There's no water cooler to dish with your coworkers around. There's no respite from the elements. The human body wasn't meant to walk up so many steps or up so many hills while carrying 50 pounds of Victoria's Secret catalogs. You know, actually, in 1 week of work, a mailman walks the equivalent of 2 marathons. So that's how the strain on your body. And not to mention the strain on your mind, because it's 7 hours alone. No human being is supposed to spend 7 hours in their own head. Trust me. Try going through a tough breakup when you have 7 hours to think about nothing but that breakup, okay? If you're not careful, and honestly, you know what it really is? It's like walking solitary confinement. That's the best way I can describe it to you. So and if you're not careful, your mind can go to places it really, really shouldn't. You take all that and you add a blizzard, and your mettle as a human being is tested in ways that only special forces people can understand. Having to get the motivation to get out of your mail truck during like a blinding thunderstorm where you feel like, what was that movie with Mark Wahlberg? The great, I don't know, he almost died in the boat. It's like you're getting smashed with water and you're drenched to the bone and all you want to do is die. Or running through the argument you had with your spouse all morning while a piercing hailstorm completely slams into the back of your neck and sucks the spirit right from out of your soul. To do that is a triumph of the human spirit. It's like that scene on Hoth in Empire Strikes Back where Luke is all lost in a snowstorm, but add that your marriage is crumbling and you have no lightsaber to save you from the snow monster that is lurking in your head. But when it was good, damn, it was really good. The ability to walk unabated during a beautiful, crisp fall day where there's a light breeze and the sunshine just kind of skips across the grass. Smell of leaves being burnt. People outside raking their lawns, talking to their neighbors. Kids wearing hoodies, riding their bikes, screaming at each other. There was joy to be found in the overlooked parts of our lives. Like how a cup of coffee in my mail truck while I was taking break just seemed to taste better while there was a light snowfall and no one was outside and you felt like you could see and hear for miles and miles. Or because I'm short and I could find like step over a fence, like that joy, that was amazing for me. I felt like Godzilla. You tall people, I'm jealous. Or when I would deliver to row homes, and when all the row homes, the porches were connected, I felt like I was Spider-Man swinging from porch to porch to porch. Or because I'm small and like a mailbox, I didn't have to walk up the steps and I could like just reach it, so I would just like slam the mail into it like I was Michael Jordan taking a dunk over Shaq. Yeah, that was pretty fun. And don't even get me started on the uniform. Red, white, and blue. And I look damn good in it. I have really nice legs, so when I walk down the street, I looked like I was a contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race. Fierce. People respected that hard work. They knew it was a tough beat to walk, but somewhere along the line, that feeling changed. I don't know if it was the recession. You know, the one where white-collar folks literally screwed the economy up so bad that I would spend most of that period delivering certified eviction and foreclosure notices to good families, to people who had become my friends, and people I knew intimately, and who did everything right. They tried to follow the American dream, but they fell mercy to forces that were beyond their control. Yeah, that's super fun time. And when the economy crashed, the Postal Service's fortunes went down with it. My bag became lighter and lighter as mail volume plummeted, as did our country's blue-collar base. But even more interesting happened was how people began to view people, those who worked with their hands or sweat for a living. Liberals couldn't understand how I still existed in the era of electronic communication and treated us and myself as a quaint, backwards throwback to a bygone era. Conservatives, wrongly, mind you, wrongly, believe the Postal Service to be a drain on the federal government, even though we receive zero government assistance. We somehow went from a country that was like, hey, that's my letter carrier, I love that dude, to, you still have a job? Don't people use email? It's like, oh, sweet, thanks. Self-esteem's perfect, by the way. There was a sea change on how people treated us and me in regards to my choice of employment. Suddenly, it was okay for white-collar people to call me a glorified paperboy. People would actively look at me with contempt or confusion when I told them what I did for a living, which never made any sense to me because I was raised to never shame someone for how they earned a paycheck. Dating was kind of difficult for me because some women would flat out not date me based on my job. It wasn't impressive or sexy in today's high-tech, post-every-moment-of-your-life world. The ones that did would disparage both me and my job publicly and privately and say things like, well, you know, when Nick gets like a real job, as if being a letter carrier was a phase, like how a teen becomes goth halfway through sophomore year. I mean, this is true. People I actively dated said these things to my face, to my friends, to my family, to their families, as if somehow making $60,000 a year with benefits and a retirement plan doesn't constitute a real job. But who am I to say? Just a glorified paperboy. It's kind of hard not to feel left behind by the entire country when everyone thinks your job should be eliminated. As we become a society that has shifted away from being industrious and making things into one that is either a service economy or a financial economy, and you're either one or the other, and anyone who works with their hands and not with their minds is somehow deemed inferior. You feel left behind in your own country with a sense that you're a stranger here. And you're judged by the uniform that you put on so you can earn money to shove food into your mouth so you can do the whole thing over again. Sure, we pay service to our blue-collar roots, but it's always followed by a look that makes you feel less like the backbone of the country and more like the country bumpkin that your mom made you invite to the wedding. In October of 2016, just as the election was reaching its strange fever pitch, I visited a high-end grocery store to procure some beer and charcuterie for what I was hoping would be a very relaxing night at home. I made my way to the beer section, and as I was straddling the aisles, you know how you do, like when you're trying to look for something, you're like doing this. This gentleman about my age, tall, with like that impeccable white dude jaw, and this like three-piece suit that made him look like Lex Luthor or some other supervillain, took one look at me and said, "Hey, bro, Miller Lite's over there." I stared him down as I grabbed my six-pack of craft beer and slowly backed away as if to say, "Go fuck yourself. Glad you judged me on my uniform and not my suspect taste in strawberry wheat beer." And then I made my way to the cheese and charcuterie section because under that uniform, I was a very fancy lad. And this woman is probably probably around my age. You know the kind I'm going to talk about, like hair impeccably done, makeup done, workout clothes. Like, let's just call her Becky. And you know, she had that big Coach bag and the garish diamond ring that just screamed, "My husband makes more money than you." So she comes up to me and she says, "Ooh, do you need help with anything?" Look, I love charcuterie. I love cheese. I spent years in the restaurant business. I've taken classes on this stuff. I couldn't help but feel insulted. She didn't approach anybody else, only me. I took one look at her choices in her cart, and I was like, I wouldn't pair that soft cheese with that salami. And she looked at me and said, "How dare you?" And I looked back at her and I said, "No, how dare you?" I walked out of that store perplexed at how I was treated. As I exited the door, all I could think of was, yep, I think I know who's going to win this election. And I remember sitting there, trust me, I didn't want him to win. I want to get that clear. I remember watching election night and people were shocked and people were scared and people were sad. But I wasn't. I kind of knew. And I felt like the current administration is what we're going to get if we don't help the middle class and we stop kicking them when they're down and taking their jobs and removing their opportunities. You know, it really terrifies me because I feel like if we don't do something soon, we're going to get more of his ilk. And that's not going to bode well for any of us in this room. I understand, and I'm not naive, but I do believe that we are our jobs, but our jobs don't tell the entire story. And to judge people based on that is folly. Earn your keep. Be a good citizen. That's all that should matter. Somehow, it no longer does. I would leave the Postal Service a few months later after spending 15 hard yet rewarding years, and I had a little success with a comedy and a book. You know, also I wanted to leave because who the hell wants to be a mailman when they grow up? When I tell people what I do now, they immediately respect me and treat me differently from when I would tell them I was a letter carrier. I'd be lying if I said it didn't make a difference about how I feel inside, or that it didn't make a difference about how I viewed myself overall. I really wish it didn't.